me, it's really just getting people to think through how diversity and inclusion impacts business and its importance as a business imperative and a business strategy. Similarly, the same with ethics and compliance. Again, I go back to any organization that should ask themselves who they are, who they want to be, what do they believe in, and then make sure that everything they do aligns with that. Look, I think different industries have approached D&I in different ways, and certain industries have adopted it earlier than others. There was a point in time where the automotive industries were the leaders of diversity and inclusion, specifically from a supply chain perspective. Then we went through entertainment, had its moments. TV and film had its moments around leaning in towards D&I. Then it was advertising. Then pharmaceuticals. Every industry has had its time. I came from the sports industry. Look, I think, it impacts different industries in different ways. And there are disparities in each industry needs to be analyzed differently. So, what's at the core of it all, I think, as it relates to any industry from a D&I perspective, is that it's not just around just being moral and on the right side of social causes, which are absolutely important. But the business case of diversity and inclusion suggests that you could actually improve your profitability by being a more inclusive organization. And that happens either through your employees, so being more inclusive in the types of people you bring into your organization, or being more inclusive around who your consumers and customers and clients are. And so connecting the dots between diversity and inclusion and profitability, again, industry by industry, that varies in terms of how they connect those dots and when, but everybody at some point arrives there. 2020 was a hard year for a lot of people. The pandemic primarily had people at home, sitting still, for lack of a better term. And so some of the things that took place in 2020, some of the racial and social injustices, it played out in people's homes because you were home watching it on TV or the like. And so it resonated with people in ways in which it may not have previous to 2020. And so there was this personal reaction to things that had been going on for a while, but that, again, because of the pandemic, people were paused and kind of forced to pay attention to. From a business experience, as you see so many corporations leaning into D&I, what the pandemic did was take everybody's business and move it digital. And so, you look at an organization like LVMH, the shopping experience went completely digital. Everything was e-commerce driven because all of our stores were closed globally. And so the digital shopping experience is very different than the in-store shopping experience. It normalizes who your customer is. And so, there wasn't a heightened focus on exclusivity, if you will, from an e-commerce perspective, because if you are already visiting our sites, visiting our websites, prepared to purchase, your intent to purchase, some of the biases that are at play literally are mitigated just because things are taking place digitally. First and foremost, like so many other corporations out there, again, because of some of the tragedies of 2020, we leaned in specifically as it relates to the African American or Black community. And so we contributed and made monetary donations to tons of organizations, the NAACP, Legal and Education Defense Fund, Race Forward, Black Lives Matters. a lot of organizations did that. And so, we were compelled to obviously support anything that, against social and racial injustice that took place. Above and beyond that, some of our brands went the extra step. And so, last year, Sephora, for example, announced their participation in the 15% pledge. And as such, what Sephora is doing is dedicating 15% of their in-store shelf space to Black businesses, which is incredible and a great starting point. Even as a part of that 15% pledge, they've created accelerator and incubator programs to help those Black businesses grow and prepare for hopefully what will be an increase in opportunity, work, volume, revenue by participating in being in Sephora stores. So incredible initiative that we're excited to announce. Our other brands all lead in a variety of ways. Moët Hennessy partnered with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund around a Thurgood Marshall Fellowship, in which we bring in 10 fantastic African American students and cultivate their development around being in a corporate environment. And as a result of doing that in 2020, out of the 10, we hired 1 or 2 full time. And so, again, all these unique and innovative ways in which we can start to contribute beyond just, making statements online but really leaning into these opportunities. 2020 was my running joke is I did more diversity and inclusion work in 1 year than I have in the previous 20. So 2020 definitely had an impact on everybody. I think what 2020 did, and I alluded to it before, really caused people to look at a lot of these issues from a very personal place, right? It caused allyship, it caused empathy, it forced people to lean in to things that, based on their lifestyle or their experiences, they didn't necessarily have to pay attention to before. I think for me, what was important was to take that energy of an emotional tie or empathy and again, connect it to the business, right? I have spoken about the business case of diversity and inclusion for 20 years and that it makes great business sense. Internally, you have cognitive diversity of thought, right? Which is your employees and your individuals pulling from their different skill sets, their different backgrounds, their unique cultures, and bringing all of that with them to work. Cognitive diversity breeds innovation. And we saw some incredible innovations that were born out of 2020 through the combination of a pandemic and social injustice and racial injustice. And so innovation, productivity, all of these things actually combine to increase an organization's profitability, right? And so D&I as a business construct, as a business strategy, is connected to profitability. And what an organization really wants to do at the end of the day is authentically tap into that. And it's at your disposal, literally, either with your employees or with your customers. LVMH is a massive organization. We have over 70 brands under our umbrella, under our portfolio, of which is easily 40 to 50 of them here in the United States. And so my responsibilities are specifically for North America. But I think what I've been tasked with doing is providing overarching strategic and advisory guidance on what the organization needs to consider for its diversity and inclusion strategy. And so I take D&I and I break it down into 3 simple pillars. It's people, which is the recruitment and retention, right? So how are we hiring and how are we keeping talent? Business, and that's, again, operationally, what are we doing to be more inclusive to, again, leverage that cognitive diversity, right? Make sure that there is a variety of experience and skill and thought at the tables making the decisions internal to the organization. And then the brand. The brand is everything external. It's our marketing, it's our ad campaigns, it's what do our websites look like? What does our social media look like? Are we being as inclusive as possible to make sure that our products and our marketing speak to as much of a wide audience as possible? And so people, business, brand is kind of the mantra. And again, there are nuances into how some of our brands adopt that strategy versus others, right? We have a fashion division, clearly. We have wines and spirits. We have watches and jewelry. We have beauty, skincare, cosmetics. We have hospitality and travel. And so every vertical is going to adopt people, business, brand in different ways. But by providing them with that high level strategy, at least they're all on the same path. This is the new normal, right? It's trying to find that appropriate work-life balance. And that's, even that is, if you look at it through the lens of D&I, you learn probably so much more about your work colleagues because you're basically in their homes, right? And so I say all the time, most people think of diversity and inclusion as only, gender, ethnicity, and sexual orientation, those three dimensions, which any individual, it's so much more than that, right? It's your marital status, whether you're a parent, where you grew up, what your living situation is. And so, we call that in D&I, we call that lowering the water, learning more about somebody other than just the physical. You'll find you probably actually have more in common with them than there are differences. And so the pandemic and working from home, it's been an actual organic way to lower the water. You'd be surprised how many Zoom meetings I'm on where somebody says, oh, I have a dog too. Or, oh, I have 3 teenagers as well. And so it's a way for people to actually align and find their similarities rather than their differences. So it's for me and for the work I do, it's actually been refreshing to see what people are like outside of work. And so it's actually been great, and it's sparked some great conversations around diversity. Someone just to check a box to say what they were doing. I needed to understand that this organization was going to be committed and authentic to its initiatives around diversity and inclusion. And as we spoke through everything that was needed for this type of role, it was evident they were serious about it. Now, again, I just said it's a really big organization. So different brands are at different maturity levels on their diversity and inclusion journey, but everybody is marching towards the same goals of getting there. And that's what endeared me to and made me think that, okay, this was going to be a great place for me to get some work done. I think everyone has had to move to remote and virtual learning, technology, meetings, and the like. And so for us, it's actually been a blessing because, again, we're a really large organization. So I've been able to have meetings or sessions with people in California as much as people in Paris while still being here in New York, especially from a learning perspective. So earlier this year, the start of 2021, we rolled out 2 D&I training. We rolled out an unconscious bias training, and we rolled out a training around racially motivated misconduct, which is kind of our version of like anti-racism. And it was really born out of a lot of scenarios that were happening at the stores in 2020. Kind of this, mix between, dealing with the pandemic, dealing with social injustice, and people just having a heightened sensitivity and making sure that our employees were equipped and trained to deal with those types of scenarios. Rolling those trainings out normally would have been in person, potentially people flying from all over the country to come to New York to deal with these trainings and undergo these trainings in person. We were able to do it all virtually and invite not just everyone in the US, but globally. right? And so that's the beauty of moving to virtual or e-learning platforms. It's I have a broader reach. Leveraging technology internationally is has been a blessing. I have a counterpart, global head of D&I for LVMH. He's based in Asia. He handles Asia and Asia Pacific. And our ability to work together to roll trainings out and roll out different talks, sessions and the like has been phenomenal. And again, we've been all using Zoom to get that done. Whereas before, even from a budget perspective, to fly people all over the country, fly people all over the world, hotel fees and the like, all of it mitigated through the use of virtual platforms. Our ethics and compliance department, I talk to them on a regular basis. They helped me craft some of the policies that I'm rolling out from a D&I perspective. We're talking about future alignment in terms of creating a value-based system for our leadership, specifically executives in the organization, to make sure that they are thinking about inclusion from an ethical perspective, and then tying metrics to that, right? So that we are being more inclusive in saying, okay, who are we appointing for our senior leadership? And do they have the appropriate bar and measurement to properly assess the rest of the organization? And so we're joining together to come up with something fantastic that, again, shows further alignment between the two areas. The lens of diversity and inclusion in France is very different than the lens of diversity and inclusion in the US, which is also going to be different than that in Asia. And so ethics and compliance actually serves as the mediator between it from a multinational perspective to make sure that we're all approaching this stuff in the same way. I think for me, the fundamental one is exactly what we've been talking about. How do we manage this work-life balance for our employees? And what does that even mean for our employees? Because I think it means different things for different people. And those are all functions of diversity and inclusion, right? What does it mean to be a working mother? What does it mean to be a person of color that might need support with elder care? Well, all of these things matter in terms of work-life balance. And so the pandemic has made a lot of this a priority in that, as I said, we're going beyond just those primary and physical dimensions of diversity of race, gender, and sexual orientation. Let's get into the things that are nuanced through diversity and inclusion, things that you can't physically see, but are impacting our employees. And what do they need in order to effectively navigate this pandemic, yet still be productive, innovative, and value-added contributors to the organization? I think, and then the flip side of that, that's internal, that's our employees. The flip side of that is, what do our customers need? And what is the customer experience expected to look like moving forward? If we are going to lean on digital and technology, then let's lean in through the lens of diversity and inclusion. We've really done, some of our brands have done some really innovative things as it relates to the disabled community, for example. And so they've adjusted their websites for folks that might be sight impaired or deaf and hard of hearing, closed captioning, making sure someone's there for that can do sign language if they need it. We even have one of our brands that made clickable icons on their website bigger in case you have a physical disability that doesn't allow you to navigate the mouse on your desktop. And so those little nuanced things that probably before we weren't thinking of, but now that everything is moved digital and it's e-commerce, let's think through what our customer expectations are of us, or be innovative enough to plan ahead for what our customers are going to need. And so everything I mentioned, whether you naturally think of it or not, is actually diversity and inclusion.